All right. Go ahead and get started here. A little pressed for time as always. This is Sports for Real with Coach Hall. Stayed up a little late last night watching that Penn State Notre Dame thriller. The game started out real slow and it kind of went just like I thought it would. Both teams struggling to try to control the line of scrimmage. In the first half, Penn State controlled the line of scrimmage. Then in the second half, Notre Dame caught lightning in a bottle and they started controlling the line of scrimmage. Once they took the lead and they scored their first touchdown, then Penn State, they said, no, we can't have that, and they came right back and tied it up. And it went back and forth like that. Every time one team would make a play, the other team would make a similar play the other way. I had predicted that this game was going to be a line of scrimmage battle, which it was. I also predicted that whoever lost the turnover battle would lose the game. Well, I was almost right. Penn State forced 2 turnovers in the first half. Well, 2 turnovers in the game, and they didn't have any turnovers until the last minute of the game. Notre Dame, Penn State's Drew Aller, they had about 40 seconds. The coaching staff had to make a decision. Do we just down it and go to overtime, or do we try to win the game and be aggressive? Well, of course, they had enough timeouts, enough time on the clock to be aggressive. And they thought, and the announcers even said it, that with the experience of Penn State's quarterback, they trust the guy. But I had a gut feeling that, something bad was about to happen. And sure enough, they ran the ball. They got decent yardage on first down. Then after they got the decent yardage on first down, then Aller made the critical mistake. He didn't really have anybody open, but he did have a late in route coming from the opposite side of the field that he could have hit. The guy had a step on the defender, but he was under duress when he threw the ball, and he threw the ball behind the receiver. And the Notre Dame guy just happened to pick the ball off, and just salted the clock down, and they kicked the game-winning field goal. So in that regard, I was wrong in the fact that I thought that the team that made the most turnovers would lose the game. The team that made the critical turnover at the worst time ended up losing the game. So Penn State, I don't know if they were a better team than Notre Dame. I think it came down to whoever had the ball last, and because of that, the mistake that Aller made, it cost his team a chance at victory. All right, Xbox King says, hi, how you doing? DOD says, I'm a big Notre Dame fan. Yeah, Notre Dame, the question I posed is, does the Irish have the luck of the Irish, like they've been saying for years? Everything seems to bounce their way at the right time. I'm not saying now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that they've been lucky up to this point. They're actually playing some pretty good football. But at the critical times throughout the year, things have bounced their way. They got the interceptions against USC. They got a couple other interceptions where they returned it back for touchdowns. Boise State, as much as they control the line of scrimmage against Boise State, if you look at that game, the first drive of the game, they gave the ball to Ashton Genty. He's got a hole big enough to drive a truck through to the left side. He's not even looking that way. Now, for a guy that's supposed to have all this supervision that he can see the whole field, he completely missed that. I've seen backs over the years who had gigantic holes opposite away from where they were supposed to go, but their vision allowed them to see it and cut back into that hole. If Genty had just glanced to his left on that first drive, that would have been a completely different direction that game would have taken. But it didn't, and Penn State was able to knock them off. I get my teams crossed up. I'm talking about Notre Dame, but I just mentioned Penn State. Sometimes you just have to be lucky. And the fact that Aller threw that pass, it wasn't a bad idea. He just wasn't in position to throw it, and he was just a little bit off, and he pretty much threw it right to the Notre Dame guy who made a diving catch. It was a great play. People have said that Notre Dame has had the easiest route to get to the college playoff route because they didn't have to play, even though they didn't have a first-round bye, they did have to play Georgia in the second round. But Georgia, you could say, was depleted a little bit. I don't think that's the reason why Georgia lost, but some are going to say that, well, we didn't have our quarterback. Well, that's part of the game. But these things seem to break toward Notre Dame's way. And then when Allen threw that pick last night, it made me start to wonder, is this team destined to win a championship? Now, the night's game, they're going to have a whole lot to say about that, because what you're going to have is a contrast of styles. Notre Dame is running the football and they're controlling the clock. That is an old form of football. Ohio State and Texas, they're going to throw it around a lot more. So it's going to become one of those things where styles make fights, as they say in boxing, and whoever style imposes on the other one is going to win the national championship. Before we even get to that, though, you got the big game tonight between Texas and Ohio State, and that is a game of speed. Now, I said the other day that Texas, I don't care if they were 0-12, one thing they always have in Texas is a fast football team, and that's going to make the difference tonight against Ohio State, because Ohio State is also a team that is fast, and they play fast teams like Oregon. But the thing is, Texas is going to have guys that can match up with Jeremiah Smith. As you know, Smith has been going off lately. He went off against Tennessee, and he went off against Oregon primarily because Chip Kelly is finding a way to move him around. Well, Texas is going to have something to say about that because, like I say, they're going to have speedy defenders that can defend against this particular guy. And if Chip Kelly doesn't call a great game, it's going to be obvious because Smith is not going to be able to get off. But let Smith tell it, nobody can cover him. And if that's the case, and he get by this tall task, then maybe just could be right that nobody could actually cover him. But I don't think so. If you want to beat Ohio State, all you simply have to do is look at the Michigan film. What did Michigan do to slow this team down? People in Ohio State would say, well, we played a different style. We were trying to play more or less old school Big Ten football against our longtime rival, but I beg to differ. Michigan, even though they didn't have a quarterback, they had a decent running game, they had the defense. And they had the defense that could match up to Ohio State, and they had the confidence they could beat Ohio State, and they went out there and demonstrated that. And what it's going to take is for a team like a Texas to go look at that film and see what it is that Michigan did, primarily on the outside with those two receivers that Ohio State has. Now, people will say that Ohio State, because they have the best roster, they're pretty much guaranteed to run through the playoffs, especially since they're hot now. Again, I disagree. If you look at the Michigan tape, like I said, you will find keys to how to slow Ohio State down. But on the flip side of that, Texas didn't play Ohio State earlier, but they did play Michigan. And they went up to Ann Arbor and ran them off their own field. So if you're already crowning Ohio State the national champion, you better think again because they may just not get past the Longhorns tonight. It's going to be tall order. It's going to be difficult, again, because of the speed. And if Sarkisian calls a good game, Ohio State's got a problem. All right, you never throw the ball over the middle late. That is correct, DOD. Say smash the like button and share the live stream. I appreciate it. But, Aller, it was kind of puzzling the way he's been playing in the playoffs. You wouldn't think he would throw that pass. I think he got caught up in the moment. And he saw his receiver breaking across late. And again, he was there if he could have stood in there and throw it, but he wasn't in position to make that throw. And he threw it behind the guy and it killed him. But back to Texas and Ohio State. This is a great matchup. And it's going to come down to, just like last night's game, who makes the critical error. I think Texas will find a way to slow Jeremiah Smith down. And I think Texas, the offense, they didn't do so great, I didn't think, against Arizona State. If they're not allowing Ohio State to control the clock, control the flow of the game like Arizona State did, and they're able to do it themselves, and they'll beat Ohio State. But if Ohio State is able to control the clock in the same fashion as Arizona State did, then they could beat Texas by double digits. But again, It's going to come down to how well does Texas match up against Jeremiah Smith. And I think they have the speed on the outside to match up with him, and it's going to be much more difficult than he realizes. But let me go back to a point somebody made to me about the modern day defenders. If you notice, a lot of times those cornerbacks, they could come up to make big hits to slow the running game down. But a lot of times they just stand back there and allow the play to happen. And then when the back gets to them, they just grab and hold on. They're not coming up to force the play. In other words, they're not being physical in the manner that a cornerback should be physical in the running game. And it was the Arizona State-Texas game where this was pointed out to me. It wasn't just one side, it was both sides. So if you can get your backs going against Texas, it looks like those defenders on the outside, they're not too keen about coming up to make a tackle. And that could play a big part. If the smart enough coach realizes that and he picks out individuals that don't want to come up and make a tackle, then you would direct your game plan to go right at that person just to force them in that situation. And they're not going to come through. And if you look at the tapes of the games nowadays, you have to give Penn State and Notre Dame credit because those guys will come up and make a play. But I didn't see that from Texas a whole lot. In short, what I'm saying is a lot of speed guys, they don't want to come up and make a play. Even going all the way back to Deion Sanders. I see him come up a few times and make a few plays, but for the most part, that's not what he wanted to do. Now, as much as I got questions about Jalen Ramsey, one thing Ramsey would do, he'd come up and hit you. So you have to respect that about him. But you don't see a whole lot of that from what these guys are doing today. DOD, okay, so smash the like button. I don't know, but it looks like to me that Notre Dame, they've got things going their way, and if they're able to play their style of play, tough physical football, and stay in contact with whoever wins this Texas game, they got an excellent chance of winning the championship. Maybe they really do have the luck of the Irish, but we're going to see because there's going to be a huge contrast in styles. But the question is, who's going to get by tonight? Because Notre Dame plays that sluggish style, a lot of people are already saying that tonight's game is pretty much the national championship. Now, me personally, I picked Texas at the beginning of the year to win the SEC. I also picked Texas to win the national championship. So my prediction is right there. But I got concerns about the way Texas has played the last two games. Does that mean anything? No. Timing has a big part of everything. You take Oregon, Ohio State. Oregon, if you go back to the beginning of the year, that offense couldn't move the ball. It just was on the wrong page, and it just wasn't very good offensive football at all. But all of a sudden, they started to click. If you go back to the Ohio State game last round, they came out and played the same way that they played at the beginning of the year. They started to pick it up as the game went on, but by that time, down 34-0, it's too late. The bye was critical in Ohio State getting by Oregon. Yes, they made some great adjustments on offense. Yes, Oregon didn't make the same kind of adjustments, and it was obvious. They got out-coached. But the overall play of Oregon was hurt by the fact that they had so much time off. And I think if they're going to make tweaks and adjustments to this college football system, those guys that don't play in the first round shouldn't have to sit around as long as they did before they played the first game. All four teams that had to bye, not only did they lose, they all started out slow and sluggish. And those slow starts kill all four of those teams. Had they played on a normal schedule, then you'd have had four completely different games. I'm not saying the outcome would have been any different, but you would not have an Oregon team playing the way they did in the first half offensively, the way they did against Ohio State. And that, again, was the difference in the game. But that's the one thing about football that you have to love. You got one shot. And when your shot comes up, either you show up or you don't. So I'm not making any excuses for Oregon for not playing. They should have been better prepared. Same thing with Arizona State and Boise State and Georgia. You got beat, but you had the opportunity. And that's the good thing about football. Basketball, you can lose 3 games and still win the championship. And I don't think there's nothing so great about that, but I will not digress into basketball. But I will say this, like I've always said, basketball is just something to do until football comes back around. Now, keep that in mind as we have less than, about a month of football left. You have the NFL playoffs kicking off on Saturday. Got a couple good games. How you doing, Mr. Bristol? Best analysis since the 1800s. I like this guy. You're funny to me. What was I saying? Oh yeah, the NFL playoffs kick off on Saturday, and one of the games that's being played, you have the Steelers getting on with the Ravens. The Steelers have lost. All right, man, you have a good day, man. I appreciate you, man. You're funny to me. Pittsburgh is going to go to Baltimore for the second time this year after losing 4 straight games. Before that four games losing streak, they were actually in position to be one of the top seeds and be the top seed in the AFC. They had Kansas City in front of them. They had the chance to seal the division against Baltimore. I just can't help but to think about the way Pittsburgh over the years has done the same kind of thing that they've done this year. There have been many games or many situations where they had a chance to control it and they just simply blew it. So I'm not surprised. And having said that I'm not surprised, you have to know that Pittsburgh has an excellent chance to win this game. Baltimore is just excited that they're going to get a crippled Pittsburgh team, they think, coming in. But if you look at the last game they played, it came down to 2 plays, really. Russell Wilson scrambled, got a first down inside the 5 and fumbled. Then he threw a pick 6. That's 14 points right there. You can't expect that to happen. And the 4 games that they've lost is because they turned the ball over. It's just like a guy that's a 50-50 shot. You standing out there and he's shooting at you, you can't guarantee that he's going to miss you. One of those shots just might hit. And that's probably what's going to happen, is that Pittsburgh is going to show up and they're going to turn the ball over, and they're going to end up beating Baltimore. And Baltimore is going to be shocked because they just thought that they just had it in the bag. And I affectionately call the Ravens regular season Ravens anyway, because they look great during the regular season. They make plays and they do all these fabulous things and set records, and then you get to the playoffs and you run up against a team that you just can't do that against, and now you got a problem. It's the look on your face like, what are we going to do next? Well, it's not a surprise because you have teams that have been sitting there watching the Ravens, and they've been putting a game plan together for the Ravens, and if they happen to play the Ravens during the regular season, they're going to adjust that game plan and tweak it a little bit, and then unleash a playoff plan on the Ravens that they weren't expecting, which is kind of surprising because you can't expect the teams to play the same way when it's time to win a championship. If you want to beat Baltimore, the first thing you have to do is stop the run between the tackles. Then when you do that, Jackson's going to try to pull the ball and run around the outside. You got to stop that. If you can't run between the tackle and he can't escape around the corner, now it comes down to him throwing the ball and beating you. He has not shown that he can do that. Yes, he can stand in there and throw to people that's wide open. He's made some good throws. He's thrown better this year than I ever seen him throw. But at the game's on the line, he starts to change into something else. He's trying to overcompensate and try to prove things that he doesn't have to prove. If he just relax and play the game, then he may have a different outcome. But if you stop that run and he can't run, it's a different Ravens team. And you're going to see that Saturday night because Pittsburgh, they know how to play against Baltimore, and they're going to throw a few wrinkles at them that they haven't seen in the 2 games that they played. And if Pittsburgh doesn't turn the ball over, and you're a betting person, I would go with the Steelers in this one because everybody in the world is counting them out already. They think that Pittsburgh is terrible, and they're not. It's just that the offense has been turning the ball over in critical times, and that is the reason why the Steelers have lost these 4 games in a row. And I think that streak is going to end. Now, preferably in the first round, I would have liked for the Steelers to draw the Texans. Had they won against the Bengals, then that's who they would have got. But instead, the Chargers are going to get them. And it's going to be a pretty good game, I think. But I just think if you've been following football a long time, then you would know that Pittsburgh has an excellent opportunity to get by the Ravens. Now, having said that, I am going to, I got a couple of Ravens friends that I hadn't talked to in a while, and we're going to talk a little Ravens Steelers before the game kick off, and try to go live with that, go live together kind of thing, and you get some interesting commentary coming from the Ravens fans. Now, speaking of fan commentary, this year I did the Jaguars correspondence with Fango Media, and I talked to the fans coming out of the Jaguar Stadium, and I got some interesting commentary coming from that way. So if you're interested in how fans feel about their teams, you can go to Fango Media and look at all the latest videos, because there was somebody in every city just like me talking to the fans, and you get a real good understanding about how they feel. Matter of fact, the last one I did, the Jaguars' last home game against the Titans, we talked about how they felt about the coaching and what direction the team should take. And it appeared clear that Peterson would get fired, which he has, but a lot of people also wanted Trent Baalke gone. And upon further research, it appears that Baalke is not very popular around the NFL. A lot of people interviewing for the Jaguars jobs, even, letting it be known that, they don't want to have anything to do with Baalke. And a lot of the former players saying, well, if you're going to fire the coach, you might well fire the GM too, because he's the one that's really setting the culture around the building. And I don't know anything personally about Baalke, but I looked at Doug Peterson, and you can just see he had like the weight of the world on his shoulders. His face is starting to look old and haggard. And I'm kind of glad he got fired, not because of the guy needed to be fired. It's because he just got the weight of the world released off his shoulders. And he's going to bounce back. He's going to end up with a coordinator job somewhere, and he'd be fine. And in another 4 or 5 years, you hear about Doug Peterson being a head coach again somewhere. But I think it was best for him to get away from the Jaguar situation, because it looks like it was affecting his health. He's looking older, and he just didn't seem to have any answers for what was taking place. And I think behind the scenes, Baalke may have a lot to do with that. So the only thing, though, Baalke's going to have a short leash. If they don't tighten up and do right next year, then Baalke would be the one getting fired. And that's when you're going to hear people say, well, you should have fired him the first time. Who knows? But that's what the fans say. So if you want to hear about some of those comments, go to Fango Media. Normally I put a link in the chat, but I didn't do that today. But just to recap, great game last night between Notre Dame and Penn State. I thought it would come down to who controlled the line of scrimmage, which in the end turned out to be 50-50. And the other major point was who was going to have the most turnovers. They were going to lose. Well, it didn't quite work out that way. Notre Dame had more turnovers than Penn State, but Penn State turnover came within the last minute of the game, and it set Notre Dame up for a field goal, and that turned out to be the difference in the game. So it's not how many mistakes you make, it's when you make them, and it didn't work out well for Penn State. So it looks like the Irish, things have been going their way, and if things continue to go their way, they're going to have a tough test whoever they play next week, because it's going to be a contrast in styles. So if they can find a way to run the football and control the clock, keep that other offense on the sidelines, then Notre Dame, that look of the Irish might take them through to a championship. And let me make one last comment before I go about this. Much as the SEC is dominating and everything, the old traditional powers of college football, those are the ones that you're seeing here in the playoffs. Notre Dame with their history, Penn State's got a long dynamic history, Texas, and Ohio State. Long historical programs, the one that have been winning throughout college football just happen to be the ones who are left standing in this inaugural college football playoff. Will the SEC bounce back? Of course they will. But it's letting you know, when you put get on the field and you have to play for a championship instead of being selected to play in a championship, then your odds are going to decrease. And I don't care where you came from, SEC, ACC, wherever. And as much as the SEC feel like they should be dominating because of all the great games they play within conference, that doesn't mean you can come over here and beat me. And these college playoffs are proving that. The same kind of things I've been saying all year. I mean, for years. You got 2 or 3 teams at the top, 2 or 3 teams at the bottom of each conference, and everybody else is in the middle, and it's not a whole lot of difference between the two. And these playoffs have proved that once again for me. But tonight, you got Texas and Ohio State. Should be a shootout, but it's all going to come down to how does Texas use their speed to match up with Jeremiah Smith and the other receiver on the outside. Should be a good game, unless there's a whole lot of turnovers or a bunch of penalties or something. Expect some fireworks tonight. So until then, wherever you are in the world, appreciate you guys chiming in with me. Hit that like and subscribe button. Got a couple things going on tonight. Going to do live basketball again, and we're going to come in later on today also with a preview of tonight's game. So got a lot of stuff going on today, and I hope you guys will join me as we talk about these sports and all different facets going on all around the landscape. So until then, catch you guys on the other side. But in the meantime, I got to go to work. So you guys have a great day. All right, Dominique, you came in at the wrong time, man. I got to go, but I got to acknowledge you. You, Chris Bernal, you guys all have a great day, man. Unfortunately, I got to get off. I got to go do something. All right. Oh, you leaving? Yeah, I got to go to work, man, but I'll be on later on this afternoon, and I'm going to do some live basketball. So check me out later on today. But I appreciate you, though, Dominique. You guys have a great day, and I'll catch you guys on the other side. I'm out.